What is the one item you own that you should definitely get rid of? Negativity. Sandra Bullock is one of the most well-known figures in modern film. From her early, difficult years in New York to her ascent to the highest echelons of Hollywood, she has made a lasting impression via her speed, achieved the height of her fame with The Blind Side, and solidified her reputation with Gravity. In addition to winning over fans with her skill and innate charm, Sandra has amassed over $5.6 billion at the global box office and has come to represent the elegant yet strong modern actress. However, beneath the glistening limelight is a life full of unsaid tragedies. Few people are aware that America's beloved once had a difficult upbringing, tumultuous romantic relationships, and personal losses that are difficult for words to heal. Her resilience was developed by those very circumstances. A heart broke repeatedly. Still another that continued to rise. Sandra Bullock, now 61, continues to smile in public, but there are still unhealed scars underneath that smile. Her tragedy is more profound than we could ever comprehend, in addition to being heartbreaking. As a little token of appreciation for Sandra Bullock's unwavering commitment to world film, please like this video before we go on this stormy adventure. Born in Arlington, Virginia, on July 26, 1964, Sandra Annette Bullock comes from an artistic family. John W. Bullock, her father, served in the military and was a vocal instructor. Grand concert halls throughout Europe used to be enthralled by the voice of her mother, Helga Meyer, a German opera singer. As a result, Sandra's early years were entwined with stage lights and music, but they were not at all the carefree image that many people may have. Sandra spent a large portion of her early years in Nuremberg, West Germany. She spent her days behind the curtains and occasionally made appearances in her mother's performances while she was on tour. Sandra made her stage debut at the age of 5 in a minor role in a Nuremberg opera. Her youthful heart began to love performing after that fleeting appearance. She quickly gained recognition in children's choirs, singing Bizet and Mozart in front of the bright lights of European theaters. She never really had a place to call home, though, because she was always on the go. Sandra experienced a profound sense of rootlessness as a child, from moving from place to city, from making friends to saying goodbye. She went to Washington Lee High School after her family moved back to Washington, D.C. when she was 12 years old. Life in America did not provide her with the comforts she had hoped for. She was made fun of by her peers for her European sense of style and what they perceived as outmoded preferences. People thought my family was so weird because my parents were opera singers, she said bitterly in one interview. It was more than just verbal abuse. Sandra fell prey to violence on the schoolyard. I was severely assaulted at school. She recalled, I was covered in blood every time I came home. The psychological scars persisted throughout her adolescence, even after the physical wounds healed. In a 2009 interview with the Daily Mail, decades later, she recalled with clarity that children are nasty. The unfortunate thing is that I can still recall each child's initial and last name who mistreated me. These encounters had a profound impact. Sandra subsequently said that she was appreciative of the resentment she experienced because she learned to comprehend suffering and made a commitment to never inflict harm on others. She developed empathy during those years of loneliness and trauma, which would later serve as the key to her captivating on-screen persona. Sandra looked for ways to blend in even though she was classified as unusual. She eventually graduated in 1982, participated in school productions, and joined the cheerleading squad. After that, she attended East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina, to study drama. She suddenly decided to drop out, though, with only 3 credits remaining to finish her degree. A momentous occasion that would alter everything. It was a risky decision to leave the classroom while the diploma was in reach, but Sandra felt that the stage and screen were her only real options. She left North Carolina for New York City, the glittering but brutal metropolis of aspiring actors, with a meager amount of cash, a single suitcase, and an unwavering will to succeed. That was where Sandra Bullock's difficult path to stardom really started. With only a shaky belief, the desire to become an actress, Sandra Bullock left the security of college life in 1986 and relocated to New York. The young woman entered the city as though she were walking into a vicious maze without any recognition, connections, or safety net. Sandra trained during the day at the esteemed local playhouse. She made ends meet by working at night as a server, bartender, and coat checker, jobs that few would think a future celebrity would do. She came home to a small, unheated flat on cold evenings. Her dinner consisted of only quick noodles and nasty coffee, and her feet were blistered from standing for hours. At age 21, she was given her first chance to perform in the off-Broadway production of No Time Flat. Even though it was a little role, she received enough good reviews to get her first agency. But years of hardship swiftly engulfed that fleeting glimmer of hope. Movies such as Who Shot Pat, Religion Incorporated 1989, and Hangman 1987. 1989 passed with no lasting impact. Years later, Sandra said that she felt ashamed of her past performances, as though she had been cast in parts that no one found interesting and that were quickly forgotten by viewers. Nevertheless, she learned how to accept failure and maintain her composure when no one believed in her from those forgotten roles. Then, in 1990, what appeared to be a fantastic opportunity presented itself. NBC made the decision to turn the popular movie Working Girl into a sitcom. Nancy McKeon was originally cast in the major part of Tess McGill, but she abruptly left the film, and Sandra Bullock, who was not well known, was cast in her place. As Sandra subsequently stated, when you're starting out, you take what you can get, even if she was aware that she would unavoidably be compared to Melanie Griffith from the original movie. Beggars aren't able to make choices. She was anxious when she started the endeavor. She acknowledged that she had no idea what she was doing, trapped between writers' and producers' divergent opinions. Tess McGill was originally intended to be humorous, but over time, it became more somber, confusing Sandra. I don't believe I performed well. Additionally, I believe that I was personally to blame for the show's lack of humor. After just 3.5 months of airing, the sitcom was canceled. Out of the 12 episodes, only 8 were aired. It was a painful letdown for Sandra, but she also learned a crucial lesson about what not to do in Hollywood. Sandra persevered despite injuries and disappointments. She got a supporting part in Love Potion Number in 1992. 9. Although the movie wasn't a huge hit, it did highlight a certain quality in her performance. Then came the true miracle. She co-starred with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes in the 1993 film Demolition Man. Her visage actually made its way into the Hollywood frame for the first time. However, that was really a prelude to Speed, 1994, her biggest breakthrough. Since then, the Speed audition's backstage tale has become legendary. Sandra entered a dimly lit room where Keanu Reeves and director Jan de Bont had assembled a makeshift bus using only a paper plate for a steering wheel and a folding chair. All I had, Sandra remembered, was a paper plate, a folding chair, a carpeted floor, Jan, and Keanu. I felt as though every acting technique I had studied came together and then disappeared from my mind. However, the filmmaker recognized her as Annie Porter because of that raw sincerity. From the very first audition, Sandra and Keanu Reeves' chemistry blossomed, leaving the staff in a state of shock. With its $350 million global box office haul, Speed instantly turned Sandra from an unknown to an A-list celebrity. Her range was further demonstrated in the 1995 romantic comedy While You Were Sleeping, which was both tense in action and effortlessly charming. After practicing lines in a small apartment on chilly nights and playing unnoticed parts, Sandra Bullock became America's love and the ideal woman for a whole generation in less than 10 years. From an unknown New York girl, Sandra Bullock became the love interest of a whole generation of Americans. Additionally, her professional apex is a journey that is measured by both the untold stories behind the limelight and by the startling numbers. With a $350 million box office total in 1994, Speed unexpectedly became a global hit. Audiences across the world were enthralled by Bullock and Keanu Reeves' flawless chemistry. Sandra went from being a B-list actress to an A-list celebrity overnight. While You Were Sleeping, 1995, was released just a year later, earned $182 million, and received her first Golden Globe nomination, solidifying her reputation as the charming heroine. Sandra has shown her versatility in the 2000s. In addition to winning over viewers, Miss Congeniality 2000 made $212 million at the box office, making her the queen of romantic comedies in Hollywood. Notice of 2 Weeks 2002, with Hugh Grant maintained her momentum. The Proposal once again wowed viewers in 2009, earning $317 million, a remarkable sum for a romantic comedy. But it was The Blind Side of 2009 that elevated Sandra to the pinnacle of success. She received the Academy Award for Best Actress for the movie, which brought in $309 million worldwide. A momentous occasion when a romantic comedy star took the stage at the top of the movie theater. If the Oscar was her greatest achievement, then 2013's Gravity was a test of her body, blood, and sweat. Sandra became one of the best-paid actresses in Hollywood after the movie made over $700 million worldwide and won 7 Oscars. But beneath the splendor was agonizing suffering. She was imprisoned on set in a huge light cage with only LED screens, robotic arms, and complete stillness around her. She hung suspended for 10 hours every day, repeating every movement with inch-perfect accuracy while listening only to director Alfonso Cuarón's voice in her earpiece. The scene had to be restarted after a single misstep. It was a cruel toll. Bullock's hip was dislocated, severe bruises, and needed further treatment. It was a dimly lit room, she remembered. I would simply play music, close my eyes, and allow my body to endure. Ironically, Sandra was experiencing emptiness, the fallout from a divorce, and the anxieties of being a single mother while portraying a lonely astronaut adrift in space. Because of that resonance, Gravity became more than simply a mechanical marvel. It became one of her defining functions, but a tribute to a woman's inner fortitude in the face of adversity. She continued to rule after that. With Ocean's 8, 2018, which made $297 million, and Bird Box 2018, which received 80 million views in its first 4 weeks on Netflix and became a global hit, Sandra continued to rule the screen. Sandra Bullock is one of the few celebrities to dominate both movie theaters and streaming services, and she has earned over $5.6 billion in her career at the box office, making her one of Hollywood's top-paid actresses for years on end. Sandra Bullock has triumphed in every genre, from heart-wrenching space epics to romantic comedies to exhilarating action movies. However, the heart of the shadows behind her light were the brighter it shone, and these shadows added depth to her iconography. Sandra Bullock's ascent to the top appears to be a contradictory curve when viewed in retrospect. She paid more in anguish the higher she went. Every victory was based on blood, sweat, and personal suffering, from a chilly New York apartment to overlooked roles to the Oscars and billions in box office receipts. However, Hollywood has always been about more than just showcasing talent. Sandra Bullock's personal life became more and more fractured as she ascended higher. Few people ventured to discuss betrayals, family tragedies, and secret wounds. In the following chapter, the box office queen will fight in the relentless ring of her own life rather than on movie sets. Even though Sandra Bullock experienced film success in the 2000s, the decade that followed was marked by a great deal of personal suffering. Christmas 2003 marked the start of it all. Sandra Bullock's primary goal was to please her godson, a 10-year-old boy who was a motorbike enthusiast. She showed him the renowned workshop of Jesse James, who was then a reality TV star thanks to Monster Garage and the West Coast Choppers headquarters in Long Beach. The boy was given a tour by Jesse himself. Jesse James is a tough motorcycle technician who is well known in the world of reality TV. A red carpet celebrity and a biker covered in grease were viewed by many as one of Hollywood's most incongruous couples. Sandra had faith in that love and had no idea how her life would change as a result of this fortuitous encounter. Sandra got a missed call from Jesse following the visit. Perceiving a personal interest, she instructed her aide to provide her email address instead of her phone number. "I'll gently reject, But Jesse persisted and emailed Sandra a 20-question game. She was surprised to learn that his inquiries delved deeply into spiritual and personal issues rather than engines or motorcycles. Sandra remarked, "I realized I was getting to know a person in a way I wasn't even looking for." She was initially biased, believing Jesse to be a bigoted, macho, and perhaps dangerous man. Jesse, meanwhile, said to Nightline that he thought Sandra was just a conceited Hollywood star. However, both were disarmed after just a few minutes of conversation. According to Jesse, it felt like a brick had been flung at my head. She had changed entirely. Shortly afterward, Jesse asked Sandra to marry him with a vintage Tiffany diamond ring from 1910. They organized a wedding in secret. Under the pretense of celebrating Sandra's 40th birthday, over 270 people were invited to a ranch in the San Juanes Valley of California in July 2005. Everyone was shocked to learn that it was the wedding. Jesse's wedding band was one she had made herself at the shop, and Sandra wore satin cowboy boots. Even their planned cross-country honeymoon had to be canceled due to the influx of paparazzi. Sandra took on the role of stepmother right away because Jesse already had 3 kids from other engagements. Sandra and Jesse looked after Jesse's small daughter, Sunny, after his ex-wife, Janine Linda Mulder, was sent to prison in 2008. By the end of 2009, Sandra had completely embraced the responsibilities of motherhood, and Jesse had gained full custody. In 2009, Sandra told Harper's Bazaar that having a family doesn't need having children. "We are all a single, large family. There was never a moment that I wished for something else." Sandra Bullock triumphantly stood on the Oscar stage in 2010 after winning for The Blind Side. When his wife was recognized that evening, Jesse showed up in a dapper suit and started crying. He showered her with adoration on the red carpet. "She's breathtakingly gorgeous. I can't breathe sometimes when I look at her." It appeared to the general public to be the ideal conclusion of an improbable union. But 10 days after the Oscars, In Touch Weekly made a shocking revelation. During the 11 months Sandra was filming The Blind Side, Jesse had been having an affair with tattoo artist Michelle "Bombshell" McGee. Jesse initially denied most of it, but he later acknowledged his errors and expressed regret to his wife and kids. "The only person at fault is me. I brought forth suffering and an unfathomable feeling of embarrassment." That was not the end of it. 2 additional women came forward in the weeks that followed, alleging they had affairs with Jesse, one that could go on for 2 years. Jesse went into rehab for personal problems as a result of constant public criticism. Sandra, however, was unable to forgive him. After 5 years of marriage, she formally filed for divorce in April 2010. Sandra startled everyone by announcing that she had adopted a baby boy, Louis Bardo, back in January, while the world was still reeling from the scandal. She and Jesse had originally intended to conceal the adoption until after the award ceremony. However, Sandra decided to raise Louis by herself following the divorce. "I was scared and sad," she said. Jesse acknowledged on Nightline that, "Simply by my own actions, I ruined a wonderful marriage and a perfect woman." As a kind of self-destruction, he even said that he had been waiting to be discovered. In his 2011 memoir, he revisited the relationship and acknowledged that he had never felt worthy of anyone. Sandra, on the other hand, decided to keep quiet. "I'm exactly where I want to be," she only hinted at years later. "I won't go back, and neither can you. I am appreciative of what I have today." Speaking to The Independent in 2018, Sandra admitted that things took a very difficult turn in her life. "But perhaps it was necessary for me to really comprehend what family meant. A harsh lesson in love, treachery, and inner strength. Sandra Bullock and Jesse James' marriage was more than simply another Hollywood scandal. It demonstrated that even the love of America may fail. But in the midst of that suffering, she found the strength to get back up and continue her successful job while raising 2 children alone. Sandra Bullock made the world respect not only her ability, but also her tenacity by turning a humiliating collapse into a voyage of rebirth with silence, dignity, and perseverance. After the turbulent divorce, Sandra Bullock may have wanted to reconcile with her 2 kids at last. However, she was deeply shocked by another experience in 2014. Sandra woke up to odd sounds in her opulent Los Angeles residence on the evening of June 8th of that year. She froze when she entered the hallway. Her house had been broken into by a stranger. Photographs, a diary, and unsettling love letters to Sandra were all carried by the burglar. Later on, he was revealed to be Joshua James Corbett, a stalker who had been pursuing the actress for years. The fact that she was in danger in her own haven turned into a nightmare. Sandra hurried into her bedroom and closed herself in. She called 911 while shuddering. Her voice was captured on the call's audio, weeping and frantic. "Someone is in my house. I need your help, please." But it was one terrifying fact that plagued her the most. Louis, her son, was absent from home only that night. For simpler care, his nanny had brought him to her apartment. Sandra shuddered as she said, "I would have run to my son's room if he had been home, and that would have changed our fate forever." Corbett was apprehended quickly and found guilty of burglary. However, Sandra's trauma did not stop there. She had chronic PTSD. Even looking to the left while driving may cause her to cry uncontrollably. "I no longer felt like myself." She admitted, "I fell apart completely." Sandra employed eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, a therapy frequently used for trauma sufferers and veterans, to address her trauma. She closed her eyes, gripped vibrating gadgets in her hands, and relived every moment of that terrible night during those sessions. Before memories grew into dangerous relationships from her past and the precarious foundations of her childhood, there was the banging at the door and the shadow of a stranger. "I realized I often surrounded myself with dangerous people and situations because that feeling was the most familiar to me," she admitted. The case later ended in tragedy. In 2018, when police arrived at Corbett's home to execute a search warrant connected to the incident, he took his own life after a 5-hour standoff with a SWAT team. Sandra could only utter one terse line. The system failed him. Years later, she told Vanity Fair that it remained one of the darkest times of her life. You think you've built a safe home for yourself and your children, and then suddenly everything shatters in a single night. That ordeal robbed her of the simplest thing, her sense of safety. If her broken marriage had stripped her faith in love, the 2014 break-in taught her that even a home could become the most fragile place of all. From then on, lived more privately, limiting public appearances and constantly reminding herself to stay strong, so her son would never inherit her fear. After the nightmare of 2014, when her home was broken into, Sandra Bullock thought she would close her heart for good, focusing only on raising her son, Louis, and later her daughter, Layla, as a single mother. But fate quietly arranged another turning point. In 2015, at Louis's 5th birthday party, Sandra hired a photographer. That man was Brian Randall from Portland, Oregon, once a Vogue model before becoming a photographer. From the very first meeting, his calm demeanor, quiet sensitivity, and natural way of connecting with the children caught Sandra's attention. He didn't approach her as a movie star, but simply as a woman. A mother tried to capture everyday moments of her son. From that photo shoot, a bond began to grow, quietly but firmly. Sandra even recalled candidly on Red Table Talk, "Do you remember the NDA you signed when you shot Louis's birthday? It's still valid, because I was bringing another child home after returning from Toronto." At that time, she was finalizing the adoption of her daughter, Layla, a fragile, stressful period. Instead of backing away, Brian stayed, walking beside her from the very beginning. Only months later, Sandra brought Brian as her date to Jennifer Aniston and Justin Theroux's wedding, one of Hollywood's biggest events at the time. They appeared discreetly, without fanfare, but the way they looked at each other was enough to show this was serious. That October, they made their red carpet debut at the premiere of Our Brand as Crisis. From then on, though rarely showy, paparazzi still caught glimpses of romantic dinners, Disneyland trips with Louis and Layla, and simple moments of hand-holding in New York. Brian already had a daughter from a previous relationship, yet he seamlessly blended into Louis and Layla's lives. Sandra admitted, "To the kids, Brian is number one, and I'm number two. But I get it. He's funnier and a better cook." When Sandra's father, John W. Bullock, passed away in 2018, Brian quietly posted a tribute with a simple caption, "As a father, sir, and a World War II veteran, we hashtag thank you for your service." A small gesture, but one that showed Brian didn't just love Sandra. He honored her family as well. During the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, Sandra, Brian, and the kids donated 6,000 KN95 masks to Los Angeles healthcare workers. Brian wrote on Instagram, the kids wanted to give 6,000 masks to the frontline heroes. Lewis and Layla said it all. It was a glimpse into their home life, modest, private, yet deeply bonded. What made their love unique was that Sandra and Brian never felt the need to marry. When engagement rumors swirled in 2016, she dismissed them. "I don't need a piece of paper to prove I'm a devoted partner and a devoted mother." On Red Table Talk in 2021, Sandra called Brian the love of my life, admitting they didn't always see eye to eye. Brian was a devout Christian while she held different beliefs. But it was those differences that taught them to listen, to compromise, and to give their children a loving, if imperfect, home. March 2022. While promoting The Lost City, Sandra announced she was stepping back from acting. "I just want to be 24/7 with my kids and family." At the time, the public didn't know that this was also when Brian began his silent battle with ALS, a rare and devastating neurological disease. On August 5, 2023, Brian Randall passed away at the age of 57 after 3 years of fighting. His family said in a statement, "Brian chose early on to keep his journey private, and we did our best to honor that." True to her promise, in December 2023, on what would have been Brian's 58th birthday, Sandra scattered his ashes into the Snake River in Wyoming, a place filled with their happiest memories. The final image of their love was shared by Sandra's sister, Sandra Bullock Prado. On Instagram, she posted a video of the Snake River flowing peacefully through Wyoming, where Sandra quietly fulfilled her vow. Jessine wrote, "Sandy brought him to the river just as she promised." That simple moment was not just a farewell. It was the ultimate proof of a love that needed no wedding vows, no spotlight, yet endured beyond life itself. There was no lavish wedding, no formal promises, but Sandra Bullock and Brian Randall's nearly decade-long bond proved stronger than many Hollywood marriages. It was a love tested by illness and loss, yet it held fast in loyalty and quiet devotion. Sandra once said, "I found the love of my life. I don't need a piece of paper. I just need someone who can make me and my kids feel safe." And so it was. For Sandra, Brian Randall remains her great love, a chapter that didn't end with divorce, but with eternity. Theirs was not a love that sought noise or stage lights to prove itself. It lived in simple dinners, in family nights together, in the patience of a man willing to stand back so the woman he loved could give her all to motherhood. Hollywood has seen countless fleeting romances, lavish weddings that crumbled within years, but Sandra and Brian chose another path. Quiet, steady, without vows but full of devotion. They built a family together, faced illness hand in hand, and ultimately walked together across the fragile line between life and loss. Sandra once said, "I found the love of my life. I don't need a piece of paper. I just need someone who can make me and my kids feel safe." Perhaps that is the simplest and deepest definition of love. Not a title, but presence, not legality, but the faith that when the world collapses, one person will remain. And for Sandra Bullock, Brian Randall will forever stand as proof that true happiness does not lie in convention, but in two people choosing to walk side by side until the very end. Sandra Bullock has endured bitter losses, yet found lasting, authentic love in Brian Randall, a love with no papers, no vows, only presence and loyalty. And now the question turns to you. Do you believe true love needs a piece of paper to be proven? Or is it simply that feeling of safety when someone is always there, no matter what storms come? Just 9 days after Sandra Bullock quietly bid farewell to Brian Randall, another storm struck, one that no one saw coming. On August 15th, 2023, former NFL star Michael O'Hare, the man whose life inspired the book and film The Blind Side, filed a lawsuit against Sean and Lee and Tui. He alleged they had never actually adopted him, as the public believed for years. Instead, according to O'Hare, the Tuohys tricked him into signing a conservatorship agreement that gave them control over his finances and allowed them to profit from his name, while he himself never needed their money. Speaking to the New York Times Magazine, O'Hare declared, "I've made millions. I'm not suing for money. I just want the truth." That truth exposed a painful paradox. O'Hare said Michael Lewis's book and the 2009 film adaptation had built a false image of him as a simple-minded boy rescued by a wealthy family. He admitted he avoided the premiere because of how belittled he felt. When later forced himself to watch, he saw himself portrayed as so ignorant that NFL scouts doubted his ability to read playbooks, which he believes hurt his draft position. Every article about me had the word blindside attached, like it was part of my name. It defined me wrongly for life, O'Hare said bitterly. When the lawsuit erupted, international media quickly spread the news. Social media exploded. Strangely, though, the outrage wasn't directed only at the Tuohys. It spilled on Sandra Bullock, who had portrayed Lee and Tui in the 2009 film and won the 2010 Oscar for the role. On Twitter, now X, calls to return the Oscar spread like wildfire. Sports host Brandon Walker wrote bluntly, "Sandra Bullock should give back the Oscar. She knows she doesn't deserve it." Other accounts mocked and ridiculed her, turning her name into a target for attack. For Sandra, who had just lost the love of her life, being dragged into a lawsuit she had nothing to do with was salt poured into an open wound. Newsweek reported, Sandra Bullock became a target of online trolls amid the blindside controversy. Of course, there were level-headed voices too. One user wrote, "What you should not do is blame Sandra Bullock. If even the press and Michael O'Hare believe that story, how could Sandy have known?" Critic Richard Roper stressed, "It's wrong and unfair to blame her for these new allegations." Some even urged the public to let Sandra mourn in peace. She just lost her partner. This isn't her fault. Let her grieve. But in Hollywood, where public judgment can be crueler than paparazzi, such defenses felt like drops in the desert. Sandra's private grief, already unbearable, was torn wide open by the weight of public scrutiny, a harsh reminder of how fragile even the brightest stars can be. Through every storm, Sandra Bullock has secured her place as an irreplaceable figure in contemporary cinema. From Speed to Gravity, from Miscongeniality to Bird Box, her films have grossed more than $5.6 billion worldwide, making her one of Hollywood's few billion-dollar actresses. The Oscar for The Blind Side and the nomination for Gravity are only the surface. What truly matters is how Sandra proved that women on screen are not just muses standing beside male leads, but forces capable of driving the entire story. Her influence extends far beyond the box office. By choosing single motherhood and adopting Louis and Layla, Sandra became a symbol of modern maternal love, showing that family happiness no longer has to conform to traditional molds. In 2015, Time named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world, praising her resilience and the human warmth she carried while maintaining simplicity in the midst of Hollywood's noise. After all the triumphs and heartbreaks, Sandra Bullock leaves behind a simple yet profound message. Happiness does not lie in titles or golden statues, but in the feeling of safety when someone is by your side, whether that is your children, your partner, or the family you choose for yourself. That, above all, is the enduring legacy of America's sweetheart. At 61, Sandra Bullock still holds a singular place in Hollywood, a star who has chosen to step back, yet whose every return commands attention. Her net worth is estimated at around $250 million, according to sources like Celebrity Net Worth and Parade. Beyond her film earnings, she owns a real estate portfolio worth more than $60 million, spanning from mansions in Beverly Hills, Malibu, and Los Angeles, to a Manhattan townhouse and a Tybee Island retreat. After announcing her hiatus from acting in 2022 to focus on motherhood and healing from the loss of Brian Randall, Sandra has devoted her time to her two adopted children, Louis, 15, and Layla, 11. She has kept them away from cameras, giving them as normal a childhood as possible, while often affirming that being a mother is the most important role of her life. In terms of career, Sandra hasn't fully retired but has become highly selective. She is making a strong comeback with two major projects: Practical Magic 2, the long-awaited sequel to the cult classic with Nicole Kidman, which began filming in England in the summer of 2025, and a new romantic thriller with Keanu Reeves for Amazon MGM Studios, marking their reunion after Speed, 1994, and The Lake House, 2006. At the same time, through her company Fortis Films, she continues to produce various projects behind the scenes. Privately, Sandra maintains strict discipline in fitness and diet to preserve her health. She rarely makes public appearances, yet whenever she does, she radiates resilience and grace, earning admiration for her strength. After Brian Randall's passing, she admitted he had wished for her to find happiness again. American media outlets have since reported she is open to dating. Though no relationship has been confirmed, her top priority still appears to be her children and family. Beyond 60, Sandra Bullock's legacy is no longer defined solely by her Oscar, box office billions, or vast fortune. It rests equally in her dignity, pride, and inner strength. She doesn't need constant visibility to sustain her fame. Her simple, steady way of life and the quiet love she devotes to family remain the clearest proof of the lasting worth of the one-time America's sweetheart. Through everything she has endured, Sandra Bullock today is more than an Oscar-winning actress. She is a symbol of resilience, a flame that cannot be extinguished. Let us send her a wish that after loss, Sandra will continue to find light and peace. And what about you? What do you think is her greatest legacy? Her cinematic triumphs? Or her proud strength in life? Don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. Real life journey is even more haunting than the movies.